Parkway City, building green cities at no cost. Welcome to 2061. I'd like to take you through the neighborhood I live in, where the Parkway City got started, and the completion of the house I built. I know you're thinking this neighborhood is no different from the ones your grandfather grew up in the 1960s, and you're right, except that my house cost less to build and less to power than 100 years ago, even though fossil fuels have been on the way out for decades. That's because we think and work a whole lot smarter than we did. For starters, I'm a builder and I travel all over the region working on projects that are just right for me and my crew. I need to drive this light truck, which used to be a gas guzzler, but is a pretty lean hybrid. Just as important, I can get to my jobs without ever getting stuck in traffic. 50 years ago, it would take 2 to 3 hours a day to get to my jobs if they were far away. But now I can get anywhere in the city like this. I back out of my driveway, mosey down the lane at about 20 miles per hour, hang a right onto the main street, and jump onto my local parkway. I will typically go a few miles on the parkway non-stop at about 40 miles per hour, which gets me where I'm going. If I have to go further, I will merge onto a freeway and go 60 to 70 miles per hour, and I can get anywhere in this city of 5 million in less than an hour. As you can see, these parkways go everywhere, and I never have to go more than half a mile out of my way to get on one. It may surprise you that these parkways are never congested, but thanks to wireless technology like cell phones and transponders, there's a trading system that allows me to pay to use the system during peak travel times, and the money goes to those who take transit. It costs me about $1,000 a year, but that's way less than I make in the time it saves me. Not only that, the money goes to my kid, who gets a ride to school every day on the school shuttle. She goes to a special arts school that's just right for her, but it's about 5 miles away. In fact, she gets all over the region by bus and bike for hockey, friends, events, and jobs. We only take her places when we want to be together. She's totally safe getting around on her bike. At first she rode a push bike, as the Aussies say, but now she has one with a power wheel, and she gets all over the place at about 20 miles per hour. Every week she gets out with her friends and just goes. She plans to cover all 2,500 miles of the linear park system by the end of the year. My wife is into yoga and swimming. She teaches yoga at the community center, but also gets together with her friends at the coffee shop next door. She spends a lot of time with our little one. The community center is great because there is a lot for the two of them. They just get in their little e-buggy and go. Besides all the linear parks, the biggest change from my grandfather's day is that we don't have any parking lots. Our city banned surface parking a few decades ago and expanded the Green P. The Green P is a utility that helps plan and coordinate the use of basement and curbside parking in our commercial areas. It works because we get over 3 times the use out of all the space we used to waste on parking lots. Our shopping areas are more interesting because there are many different boutique businesses besides the big boxes, where we buy from local craftspeople and industries. The inspiration for the Parkway City came from New York and the linear parks and parkways that were created at the dawn of the automobile era. What needed to be tested is whether it would work financially if the parkway system that started there could be expanded to create a walkable grid. This image of existing land use for a typical suburb shows residential in yellow, commercial in magenta, high-density residential in orange, parks in green, and institutional in blue. After reshuffling the deck, the same proportion of land uses form a layout that everyone can walk or ride around if they want to, or use the car if they need. It is all about choice, because we will never run out of energy. It will just cost more until we find better ways to capture or create it. But there had to be baby steps to get there. There had been a lot of colossal failures investing in transit systems that people just did not use. Something had to be done, so they started a simple experiment. Planners identified mid-block roads that could become through roads, and started a program that would allow minibuses to use them during rush hour. Existing main streets would be augmented with increased through-road connections and infrastructure. Over time, parks were linked together, providing the venue for bikeways and parkways. Each of these multiple grids provide redundant routes for transit, bikes, electric vehicles, cars, trucks, and pedestrian mobility. Things started to catch on as people realized they could get door to door and take advantage of the new transit corridors away from the congested main streets and freeways. Soon there was political pressure to cut through the traffic mazes in the old suburbs. As population in those suburbs started to decline, the through-road grid was augmented with the linear park grid that contained bikeways and rapid transit parkways. When I started college, I was able to move into an apartment with a couple of roommates. We lived on a main street close to our local hangouts and could take the bus to campus. Later, we could afford a townhouse that wasn't far from my job at a local design studio. When I met my wife, we'd saved enough that we could afford a bigger townhouse. We really liked this design because the neighborhood looked really great and had lots of trees. It had space for a backyard and some privacy. We parked under the backyard off of a shared alley. We were used to living in apartments and townhouses and liked how the car didn't dominate the neighborhood the way it used to. The building business has been studied for a long time now because people are able to retrofit these old suburban neighborhoods. The old snout house suburbs are getting replaced, sometimes with homes on larger lots, other times with high-density townhomes. People started to prefer the benefits of not being separated by parking lots everywhere. Developers realized that burying the car gave them much higher densities and bigger yards at the same time. Which brings us back to where we began. My new house is actually a remodel of an old one that sat on a quarter-acre lot. Bungalows like mine are popular because they are low cost to build, but also low cost to maintain. The urban forest keeps the house cool in summer and warm in winter. The ground stays a constant 55 degrees, so we use that for geothermal energy. While this house looks the same as it did 100 years ago, it is made of renewable materials and is powered by renewable energy. Parkway cities are being built everywhere, but you hardly realize it because they all have their own character. I've lived in a few of them. Some are really dense and vertical, like New York. New York was great, but it was really expensive. The high-rise buildings and rail transit systems meant that we had very little space, which was not ideal for us as a family. Some are really sparse. It really depends on how valuable the land is and how people prefer to live. The South was easy to get around, and we had more than enough space, but we were used to more variety of places and things to do. This meant we either had to go a long way or do without. So we ended up back home, comfortable with what we were used to. This community was not too different in size from the communities that were there at the start of city culture. There is no ideal size for a community, but there is a workable scale for communities in the relatively new world of the automobile and internet. Each increment of community will be scaled according to its mode: the desktop for the web, the concession for walking and biking, the town for politics and services, the city for working life and association, and the region for the global economy and resources.